Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go ahead and get started. Hello, and thank you for joining this First Look webinar, Keys for Implementing a Value Pricing Strategy at Your Dealership. My name is Keith Woodward. I'm the Vice President of Marketing here at First Look Systems, and I'll be your moderator for today's online event. With me today is Dan Moran, one of our top automotive retail experts here, who's bringing a wealth of knowledge and over 20 years of experience in the used car business. But before we get started and I hand the mic over to Dan, let me just go through a few housekeeping items just to walk you through. If you have any questions during this event, just put them in the chat window located at the lower part of the screen. We'll attempt to address these in real time, or we'll address many of them at the end of the presentation. And one last thing, this will be recorded, and we'll be sending this out as a follow-up email to each of the attendees on this webinar. So with no further ado, let me turn it over to Dan Moran. Dan, why don't you go ahead and take it away?
All right. Thanks a lot, Keith. I appreciate it. Great. Thank you. My name is Dan Moran. As Keith mentioned, I am the Retail Operations Specialist for First Look Systems. I'm looking at the attendee list. I actually see some names here that I recognize, so that's great. Some customers that I've worked with down here in Texas. But I think you'll find there's a pretty good mix of, of things that current customers can definitely kind of take away and hopefully be able to implement in their dealership. And there's hopefully going to be a lot of unique ideas and perspectives that maybe some hopefully potential future customers can use as a sounding board at their dealership to maybe hopefully implement some change and get some of your daily processes moving in the right direction. So I'd like to spend the first few minutes giving you an overview of just First Look in general and the core business challenge that we here at First Look are focused on, and then we'll get into some of the solutions that we've designed to address that challenge and the immediate impact that we think we can have both on your store and if you're part of a group into the group setting. So real quick, we were founded in 2001 by Pat Ryan Jr. In Chicago. So we're the oldest player in our field. We work with large groups, single point stores, mid-sized groups, all across the country. Some names you recognize there from folks like Hendrick and Penske and Lithia, the Luther Group, North Park out of San Antonio, all the way down to single point stores. So what we've been able to do is we've been able to take a lot of the best practices and a lot of the benchmarking, some of the unique benchmarking criteria that some of those larger, some publicly traded groups use to help manage their business and leverage success, and we implement it into something that a store, no matter the size, can take, put into practice at their store and realize a lot of the successes that sometimes are only found through some of the large groups. In fact, about 80 to 90% of the folks that I work with are single point stores down here in Texas. So a lot of good things that anyone, no matter their size, can take advantage of. So one of the trends that we've noticed over the last couple of years, though, from working with a lot of these large groups, is the debate over gross and turn. So since the recession about six years ago, there's been an isolated movement to treat all cars as commodities and be willing to take less gross on every unit in hopes that magical turn will take care of all of their ills. The hypothesis being that this approach will allegedly increase turn and volume. So taken to the extreme, there's even some pundits out there in the marketplace that kind of play in the same field as we do that has preached that you should start pricing every car at 96% to market. And beyond being a gross oversimplification of the car business, the impact this has had on the market is obvious, eroding gross profits. In fact, based on a recent dealer survey that we conducted, this is the #1 concern for general managers and dealer principals going into 2014. So in reality, we know that any retail business, there's high-margin products and low-margin products. The key to success is understanding which is which. In other words, which cars are what we call gross cars, and which cars are what we call commodity cars. Have you ever run into a buyer from CarMax at an auction? He's usually the guy that has his hand permanently affixed in the air. So why do you think he pays sometimes obscene money for cars that you think he has absolutely no business paying that much money for? Well, it's because CarMax knows which cars are valued higher by consumers. And to that end, CarMax published a study recently that said that 77% of their customers rank value as their top buying criteria. Only 23% rank price as their #1 buying criteria. And so simply what does that mean? it means that how much money are you leaving on the table for those cars that you're automatically pricing at 96% to market and hoping for that turn to happen and make your gross profits. So how does First Look combat this issue? So we've developed a high-tech system of programs designed to help you maximize gross, maximize turn in every aspect of your business. So we start off with store-level dashboards. So not just reports and not just data that's feeding you information on a daily basis, but truly a window into the analytics of how your store operates in every department. We do that through kind of our 4 cornerstones of our foundation: innovative stocking tools, accelerated appraisal tools, value pricing tools, and online merchandising tools. We layer in the most high-tech market intelligence available today, from the most robust set of market listings available to the books and auction data that you're used to getting along with vehicle history reports. But we're also able to layer in DMV data for your area and for your region, and most importantly, store history, how you've performed on those cars in the past. And sometimes there's cars that would normally be considered commodity cars that are actually going to be gross cars for you based on how you've performed in the past, and things that you may not think about: certification, all sorts of different things that they're able to help you make those determinations on each and every unit that you have on your lot. So what we can do for groups is we can take these analytics and we can layer them on top of one another to create a group command center, so that on a group level, you're able to get insights into each and every part of your business at each and every store that you have. So when you're talking about solving problems at your individual dealerships, sometimes from an enterprise level, it's hard to grasp exactly where you need to start in order to solve your issues. We're able to give you those analytics on a group level and allow you to drill down even into the management level, so you know exactly which managers at which stores need to affect change in order to move your group forward. So the portion of the business that we're going to be focusing on today is value pricing. And just for your information, we'll be doing webinars like these once a month covering different topics. So the one that we're going to be covering today is value pricing. So simply put, 4 keys to the value pricing metric. First and foremost, show me the data. So the internet has invaded virtually every part of the dealership world. The average car buyer spends about 11.5 hours online doing research before they even go in to buy a car. And about 9 out of 10 people are going to go online before they buy it. So 5 years ago, consumers visited up to 6 dealerships in person before they bought a car. You remember those days where your closing rate at 20% was enough to keep your lights on, your bills paid. If you're closing at 20% now, you're likely down that downward spiral of peril. So I see a lot of the dealers that I work with that are averaging 40 to 60% in their closing rates, and they have to because they're seeing fewer customers walk through their doors. So it's never been more important to price right from the beginning. So having the data to be able to drive your pricing correctly from the start is essentially important. Second piece, unit cost doesn't matter. Simply put, we're past the point now where you can start a car at cost plus and negotiate down. Consumers are weeding out those high-priced cars, and honestly, consumers a lot of time are weeding out those low-priced cars because they assume something is wrong with them. So they have a very narrow window of vehicles that they're actually going to take that second step with and come physically visit your dealership. All cars are not created equal, so recognizing the difference between those commodity cars and those gross cars are essentially important in knowing which cars that you can afford to hold on and which cars you absolutely need to get in there, price aggressively from the beginning, turn it and get something else on the lot to take its place. And then price to sell. Being priced in the game is absolutely key to getting foot traffic through your doors. And we'll talk a little bit more about that here toward the end of the presentation. So the first piece is show me the data. So from market data to historical and store group data. So what is the market day supply of the car? How many listings are in the marketplace? What's the average miles for the market? And then layer that on top of store data. Do you sell these units in high volume, high gross? What's your average days to sale? Just recognizing what works in your marketplace isn't the end-all be-all anymore. You have to know how this vehicle performs for you personally at your dealership if you want to be able to make good, aggressive pricing decisions from the beginning. So, knowing the basic history of the car, from vehicle history reports to books to current listings in the marketplace. So, obviously, knowing market day supply, having a threshold and drawing a line in the sand and figuring out, okay, above a certain number of market day supply is going to be a gross car, below a certain number of day market day supply is going to be a commodity car for me. So, and again, being in tune to your market, and again, knowing what you've sold these cars for in the past is going to be key to making good pricing decisions from the beginning. Not only that, but just taking all the information that's available on your desktop when you're sitting behind the, when you're sitting in the tower putting deals together. It's also important to have all that information available to you while you're on the go, while you're at auction, while you're visiting other dealers' lots, taking a look at their inventory, maybe doing some trading between stores, and then if you have multiple stores in the group, knowing what another store's inventory position looks like and how that car would affect change at another store within your group. So part 2, unit cost does not matter. Gross is made in the purchase, and what's my labor rate? Start with the labor rate. So one thing you kind of have to ask yourself, and I've worked in dealerships before where the service drive charged the used car department retail labor rates to do their reconditioning. I've worked at stores in the past where there's been a discount involved. CarMax is one of those. CarMax pays their internal labor rate of $35 an hour. So no matter which side of the fence you sit on, you have to have an understanding of how your labor rate affects your bottom line at the dealership. If you're constantly butting heads with your service department trying to figure out how you can get the cars reconditioned on your front lot and still be able to make your grosses, this might be a conversation that you have with your general manager and see if there's any way that there can be a discount for the service department's biggest customer, the used car department. Like I said, check out your 20 groups, see what other people are doing in there, but just know that it all boils down to how much faith you have in the used car department to hold gross and sell value, or where you want to allocate the profits within your dealership. So the first piece is gross is made in the purchase. Unit cost doesn't matter, and I know this is sometimes a hard one to swallow for anyone. So I know in the internet age, it's just the nature of our world. Does the consumer care if you pay too much at the auction? Does the consumer care that you need to make $2,500 on each and every car that you move through your department? Absolutely, the answer is no. They can sit in front of their computer and comparison shop with every one of your competitors. Think about it like this. When you're at the auction buying cars, there comes a point in time where you just simply put your hand down because the cars become too expensive to make sense for you and your dealership. And consumers do this with each and every car that they see online on AutoTrader. So they quote-unquote put their hands down on cars that meet their needs that are overpriced compared to market. So gross is made in the purchase. Taking all the right steps to bring the vehicle in at the right cost will determine if you make good gross or not. I know this isn't a new idea for anyone out there on this call, but the market is only willing to pay so much for the car that you're selling, and unit cost has absolutely nothing to do with it. But procuring the vehicle correctly, either at the auction or in the appraisal lane, obviously determines the profit that you're going to end up making. And it's obvious that trade acquisition is an incredibly important component in achieving the best mix and increasing your retail sales efficiency. What we mean by when we say selling the car within the first 60 days of ownership. With the average customer visiting only 1 or 2 dealerships in person, closing people that walk through the door has never been more important. It's obviously driving new car sales. It's driving other used car sales. But more importantly, a lot of the customers that I work with see their gross profits on trades almost double what they sell their auction cars for. So closing trades has never been more important. And it's not just looking at the closing rate and saying, hey, we got to put more money on cars and we got to drive this number up to affect all the other parts of our business. It's knowing what numbers actually drive and affect that closing rate. Things like system usage. How often are you using these great tools that companies like First Look are providing your used car departments? It's knowing what your average immediate wholesale profit and loss is. That has a huge effect on how effectively you're closing your trade. If you're making $1,500, $1,800 a copy on those piece of junk cars you're just taking to the auction anyway, how many deals are you missing on the front end because you're undervaluing their trades? So knowing what numbers drive that overall closing rate is essentially important to closing more trades and holding more gross. Third piece of the puzzle, not all used cars are created equal. Obviously, we have high-margin cars and low-margin cars that make up everybody's inventory all across the country. Things like good miles, low miles per year, low market day supply, low number of listings in the marketplace. How unique is the vehicle that you're offering up? And then older quality retail units. So maybe those cars that are 5, 10 years old, they're still back of 100,000 miles, or have been one-owner cars or well-kept. You can obviously ask a premium for those cars because they're very, very hard to replace. They're very, very hard to find somewhere else. And then low-margin cars. So high number of listings, high market day supply, rental rockets, average to high miles. Cars that are a dime a dozen that your customers can find anywhere that they're looking all across the internet. It's a matter of, like I said, drawing a line in the sand and just figuring out on what side of 100% you need to be on each and every unit in your inventory. So successful retailers like Texas Direct Auto in Houston know what drives internet traffic to specific units. If any of you guys have ever read his ebook, 0 to 60 Million, Rick Williams, who founded Texas Direct, and I worked for him for a number of years, says that there are 3 things that will sell a car: price, options, and miles. Pretty simple, but if you think about the cars that you make gross on, well-equipped, low-mileage units in high demand in your marketplace, and historically good performers at your dealership. And now think about cars that end up aging out on you each and every time you have one, those high-mileage rental rockets that you and everyone else on Dealer Row has. You've probably got a short list of cars, and I know I did back when I was sitting behind the used car desk, but I know each and every one of you guys probably has a short list of cars that your buyers know never to buy because they never perform on your lot. So being able to have the analytics and being able to have the information at your fingertips to back up that gut feeling is incredibly important in making those everyday pricing decisions. And the number 4 piece of the puzzle is price to sell. The quote you see in front of you is from Jack Gillis. He's president of the Consumer Federation of America. And he recently said in an article, customers actually don't like haggling over prices, as evidenced by the fact that we haggle over almost nothing else except cars. If the price is too high, customers just won't buy the product. It sounds simple, but this is where your commodity versus gross analysis is put into play. If you look at the competing vehicles in your market to determine the right price to make you a competitive player in the market, have you ever shopped for something on Amazon or eBay or any other online site, not necessarily cars, but you found multiple companies selling the same product at vastly different prices? Do you go out of your way to call the company with the highest price and try to haggle them back down to reality? Absolutely not. So being priced in the game is essentially important in used cars as it is everywhere else. So for a commodity car, the price you set here needs to be based on the probability of sale, and in particular, the probability that that vehicle will sell within the next 7 days at your set price. If you're not confident the car will move at that price, then it's time to reevaluate. Remember, there are units that are easily replaceable and should be treated that way. If the answer is definitely not to be the cheapest. On the other hand, it doesn't usually make sense to be over 100% to market on these commodity cars. What would be the incentive to come to your dealership for that vehicle? Price it competitively, and then sell value in how you merchandise the car online. And gross cars, price to be competitive while maximizing your gross potential. You still want to make sure you aren't completely out of the game when compared to the competition, but chances are there's not a lot of competition for those cars. We looked at that slide earlier that that said, especially those older cars that are in great shape, how replaceable are those cars? That should be a determining factor in how you're pricing. So getting into the actual first look tool, you guys can all ask yourself this, kind of in your own little rooms there. But do you have an aging policy at your store? How do you determine what percent to market you're pricing each of your cars as it relates to their age? One of the tools that First Look does have is our pricing analyzer tool, where we have the ability to break down your entire inventory based on percent to market layered on top of age. Obviously, as a car ages through your system, the lower percent to market that you're willing to take on that car. So not only can we help you identify potentially overpriced cars in your inventory, but we can also do the flip side as well. What about potentially underpriced cars in your inventory? Are the cars that you have maybe for less than 30 days that are historically good performers for you that you're currently asking below market average for? It's entirely possible, and being able to analyze each one of those vehicles one-on-one may help you find some gross on some cars that you may not realize that you had. I've seen customers that I have before that are pricing cars to market. Maybe a Honda Fit for $14,400. Well, that's a great performing car for me at my dealership. Maybe I can afford to ask $14,900 for that car, regardless of where that rank puts me in my marketplace. So not only can we help you take a look at being priced competitively in the marketplace, but we can also show you how that competitive pricing affects your internet traffic. We talked about being priced in the game as being the most important factor here, where not necessarily to be the cheapest, but to make sure that you're maximizing the online traffic that you're getting for those cars. So no matter if it's store level or on a group level, we can help you analyze your BDPs, your search page views, and your total leads on autotradercars.com, your dealership website, and if you're a single point store, we can help you analyze that down to the car. If you're a group, we can show you store by store exactly how you're performing and allow you to take that next step and drill down even further deeper into it. So I guess to wrap it all up, we all know that in any retail business, there's high-margin products, low-margin products. Value pricing allows dealers to dissect each unit for the unique piece that it is. Used cars are all different. Their options, history, everything else. It should be treated that way. And in many ways, there's still an art to pricing the right way. However, there are some great scientific guidelines you can bring into the decision-making process that will help make you even more successful. And I work with a group down in San Antonio. I mentioned them a little bit earlier, the North Park group. But Bob Terrell is the corporate used car director down there. And his direct quote to me was, "Numbers don't lie. I appreciate our team for trusting me and show them how we could cut our prices sooner, lower our old age percentages, and raise our grosses by using First Look's robust analytics and decision-making capabilities." So making sure that you're priced right from the beginning, sticking to a pricing strategy, and following it all the way through to the sale. Caleb Auto Group's seen great successes using it, and I definitely encourage you guys to kind of take some of the things we talked about today and apply them to your own dealership no matter what system that you're on. If you saw some things during this workshop, particularly if you're an existing customer, I can help you get in contact with your account executive or account management team so that they can show you some of the tools that we talked about here and maybe some strategies that will help you take your used car department to another level. And if you're not a current First Look customer, then I would be happy to work with one of our sales executives out in the field in your region, and help dial into your specific store and see if there's anything that we can pull out of there using our first-rate analytics to be able to show you exactly how value pricing could potentially change the landscape of your dealership. All right, with that, I'm going to open up some questions. I think Keith's going to jump back in and see if we can get some questions distributed.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Dan. A couple questions didn't come up. Let me just read one of the first ones here. Dan, if you could answer this, what do you see are some of the biggest traps dealers are facing every day in regards to pricing?
Okay, that's a great question. One of the things that I've observed going into some prospective dealers over the last couple months and I know it's something that I used to fall into a trap on too back when I was in the dealership is not sticking to a pricing strategy. I see a lot of guys, particularly those cars maybe that they personally bought at auction that are getting 50, 60 days old on them. They're going in there and they're reevaluating their prices each and every day on those units. It's not only is it just not only is reevaluating price changes daily on specific cars, in my opinion, a little bit of a waste of time, but it also doesn't give that car enough chance to actually sell at the price that's determined. If you're doing it right, if you're using the tools at your disposal, if you're pricing it to market, price it to be in the game, and you're not letting cost or any other factor cloud your judgment and get in the way of helping you drive traffic to that car based on price alone, then you're doing yourself a little bit of an injustice. Those cars do take a little bit of time to be able to work through the system and sell. So going in and reevaluating pricing each and every day on specific units, especially your old age ones, I've I've never seen a whole lot of value in that. And let's be honest, especially those older cars, they've been showing up on customer searches for, sometimes a few months. So, reevaluating the price by 80 or 100 bucks isn't going to drive any more traffic to that car than's already been driven to it.
Great. There's one more question that I think is relevant. We hear a lot now about time to market. One question is asking Dan, any trends or benchmarks you guys are seeing around getting cars online today?
Yeah, actually, I just put together an action plan for a dealership that I work with down in Florida to help cut their time to market down for a single point store. So yeah, there actually are. I've seen kind of best practices at dealerships that say 72 hours for the big three: pictures, descriptions, and pricing. That's kind of their threshold, and that's their limit. I know, when I was working at the dealership, I got a spiff if I got a car online with all three of those things within 72 hours. And in fact, we've got some great new tools now. We've got an online merchandising tool that's available on the iPhone and the Android phone that will allow you to take pictures. I know the camera on those on an iPhone or some of the latest Android phones are better than the digital camera I have at home, but we have tools at First Look that will allow you to wirelessly upload photos, option packages, and equipment on a car wirelessly via Wi-Fi connection. We'll distribute them out to all your internet sites. Generally takes about 80 to 90 seconds. I've got a Chevy dealer south of Houston down in the Clear Lake area. His porter has an iPhone 5. When he takes a car in on trade, takes 2 or 3 good pictures of it, at least to get that part of it online, prices it, sends it out. He told me that he had a customer call him, and when the customer got home with his new car, the car that he traded in was already on Auto Trader with pictures, descriptions, and pricing by the time he even got home from the dealership. Lots of great best practices out there, but I think if you're shooting for 72 hours, you're doing some good things.
Okay, Dan, I got one more for you. One just came in. What is the average transaction difference from actual selling price to asking price? Again, the question is, what's the average transaction difference from an actual selling price to asking price?
I got you. I've seen it vary store to store. Some of the Highline stores that with like Lexus, Mercedes, BMW, they've got a little bit bigger. They've got a bigger delta between asking price and selling price than say a Honda, Toyota dealer. And it also depends on your store's philosophy as well. I've seen some that range 40 to 50% off of ask price. I've seen a lot of dealers, and I work with one here in Austin that they've taken the CarMax model and applied it to the traditional car dealer as well, where they do the no haggle pricing. I know that's a trend that's out there in the marketplace, where the price of the car is the price of the car. I've seen a lot of dealers have a lot of really, really, really good success with adopting that business model. I don't personally think it's right for everybody, but it's definitely something to think about as a strategy going forward for some dealers. And for guys like that, the price that they discount is literally 0%. So those guys, especially, the pricing formulas that we talked about today are essential to their daily operations.
Great, Dan. Another question I just thought was relevant just came in. How much consideration do you give to putting prices inside block search segments online? So 15,000, 15K, 20K?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people that discount that, but we talked about earlier that that quote that we had earlier that said about the only thing that consumers typically haggle with now are car prices. But the way that customers are searching, you almost have to use some of those traditional pricing blocks. My wife's a real estate agent, and she'll be the first to tell you that pricing blocks work in real estate. You know what? Customers search for cars similarly to how they search for houses. They're looking for specific features that are applicable just for them, and pricing is no different. So the example I brought up earlier. I work with a dealership in Dallas. I work with the Huffines group there, and I remember looking at their pricing analyzer, and that example I used was a Honda Fit. It was an '09 Honda Fit Sport that they performed fairly well with at one of their locations. And they were asking $14,400 for it, and I asked them why such kind of an odd number for that car, and they said that they happened to have just priced that car based on where they would fall number to market, like 3 out of 10 or 3 out of 11 for their marketplace. So bumping that car up an additional $500 to $14,900 day one made sense because you stayed under that $15,000 window. Now, it may have altered what number they show up for on the search page in a place like AutoTrader or a list view like that, but it didn't affect how their click-through rate was on that car. In fact, their click-through rate actually went up slightly because people sorted. They're searching for under $15,000. They're going to search from highest to lowest a lot of times because, generally speaking, that's what they've been approved for credit-wise. So a lot of times they'll see what the most expensive car is that they're going to be able to afford because they equate that with quality and value. So their click-through rate actually went up slightly on that car by bumping the price up a nickel.
Great, thanks, Dan. I think that's going to wrap it up. There don't seem to be any more questions in the queue. So with that, I think we'll wrap up, Dan, and to everyone for joining today's webinar, thank you very much. We'll be following up here in the next 24 hours in email, and there'll be a link to the recorded version of this webinar. So if you have any questions or would like to share this recording with any of your teams at the dealership, please do so. If you have any questions or would like to learn more about our workshops, please visit our website, firstlooksystems.com, and we look forward to hearing from you. Thanks again, everyone.